She lies in the dark, listening. Jesus is in her house. She should be up, fixing something for them to eat. But she just can't. She lies still, aching with fever. The door opens and closes. Soft light enters the room, hurting her eyes. Jesus is standing by her bed. He takes her hand and holds it gently. His hands are cool and healthy. She can actually feel his health, this strong young man. He strokes her brow. Then he takes her hand between his hands and holds it against his heart. And a rush goes through her, and the achiness is gone. Her headache is gone. The fever is gone. He pulls her up, and still holding her hand, she feels fine now. The fever is gone, her brow is cool, she gets up, and full of gratitude, she ministers to him. Some translations read that she served Jesus. It's the second time in Mark's gospel that this word appears, that we see, serve, minister. The first time we see this word is at Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, when the angels came and ministered or served him. Those same angels that are spoken of in Isaiah that come to be with us and protect us and travel with us on our journey in this life. Ministering, serving. We don't know the name of Simon's mother-in-law or very much about her at all. This is the only story in the Gospels about her. Paul writes in one of his letters that she later accompanied Peter in his missionary travels. But all we know from this story is that she has a fever. Jesus heals her, and she gets up and serves him. And what strikes me about this story is how almost insignificant it seems in the scheme of things. We hear demons again. I mean, the powers, the forces of this world, Jesus is stronger. He casts out many demons. He heals people. And so this little story about Simon's mother-in-law seems insignificant. Between last week's gospel and today's lesson, we have a picture of this typical day in the life of Jesus. He goes to synagogue, he preaches so well, the people gape at him in amazement, and right in the middle of his sermon, a man runs up to him screaming and hollering, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." And Jesus pauses in his sermon. Boy, I really hope that doesn't happen this morning, because I certainly couldn't do much about it. But he stops, orders the demon to be quiet and come out of the man, and the demon comes out shrieking, and Jesus finishes his sermon. Then he and his disciples leave the synagogue for the home of Simon and Andrew to have dinner. A typical day in the life of Jesus. So we come to Simon's mother-in-law. Sick with a fever, just a fever. And Jesus heals her. Small potatoes here in comparison with shrieking demons. And yet, I wonder whether Jesus comes to us more often in the small things in our lives, the seemingly insignificant things. And sometimes we're so busy looking for him in some great experience, like casting out demons, that we miss him in the everyday events of our lives. More often than not, Jesus comes to us in our weaknesses, with our small faith, and in the middle of the difficulties of our daily lives. I remember years ago, I was in my first call at Elam in Barnum. And I was at the surplus store in Moose Lake, one of my favorite places to go. It was one of those colder winter days, not like the ones we've been having lately. And I was dressed fairly well, except I wasn't wearing my boots. I had on a pair of gray loafers. I was just going to stop in there real quick. Well, I made my purchases, got back into the car, and started driving off. But the car felt weird. It was veering off to the right, and I heard something going per-thump, per-thump, per-thump. So I stopped the car. You know what I found. I had a flat tire. Flat. Well, fortunately, not too much earlier before that, my husband Paul had taught me how to change a tire. So I was ready to take this on. Okay, here's my first flat. He taught me how to do this. I can do this. So I go out to the trunk, get the jack, the spare tire, the rest of my tools. I start working on prying off those hubcaps or the nuts on the tire when an older gentleman walks by and he says to me, "Having trouble?" What's with these Scandinavian types? I mean, really. Yeah, my tire's flat. Well, hang on for a few minutes while I finish in the store, and I'll come back and I'll help you. And he dashes off. Yes, even some older guys can still dash. And I continue trying to, loosen up those lug nuts. Now, my new friend, Bernie, returns just as my toes are starting to numb to the point where I can't feel them anymore. And he says, "Here, let me do that for you." Now, yeah, while I was actually kind of looking forward to doing this myself, since it was my first flat tire, I'm also smart enough to recognize superior talent when I see it. And besides that, my feet were freezing. So Bernie had that tire changed faster than I can tell the story, and with a final twist on that last lug nut, he said, "Well, this ought to get you home safely." And I thanked him profusely, and he tipped his hat to me, and he said, "Yeah, sure," and he was off. And as I drove home, I smiled to myself, because I never thought that Jesus would look like an old Swede wearing a fuzzy cap with ear flaps. And then I asked myself, how can I show gratitude to Jesus, who's concerned about me enough to come and change my flat tire? Jesus comes to you in your weakness, in the middle of your daily problems, and he takes your hand, and he holds it gently, and he strokes your brow, and he takes your hand in both of his, and he places it close to his strong heart. Can you feel it? How do you respond to a love like that? How do you show gratitude to Jesus when he heals the fevers of your daily life, whatever they may be? Jesus ministered to Simon's mother-in-law, and in gratitude, she turned around and ministered to him. She provided for his needs after a long day of healing and casting out demons and preaching and all the rest of the things he was doing. People chasing after him trying to go away and find a quiet place and being strengthened there and coming back and doing it all again. And she nourished him with food, and she provided a quiet place for him, away from the crowds for a little while, until they came clamoring at the door. And then I imagine she ministered to them too. I imagine that this woman also enjoyed the company of Jesus and his friends after her long illness had isolated her from enjoying company. We don't know the name of Simon's mother-in-law. We don't know much about her. We do know that she had a fever, and that when Jesus healed her, she got up and ministered to him and to the throngs at her door. She probably went to bed that night and slept very, very well. May you see Jesus as he comes to you. And yes, all the small, insignificant things of your life and your day